I'm against the clock now. I've got a train to catch, 3 p.m. Need to head on. This is the town of Villers-Bocage. Fierce fighting here. It wasn't the 6th Tank Brigade who liberated it, but I'll try and get some photos just to illustrate the devastation on the town itself. Royal Artillery, air bombardments, and then the final assault. Unbelievable. This ridge line in front of me here, this is Hill 112. This was fought over by the 15th Scots a long time before the 6th Guards Tank Brigade arrived in Normandy. This was early on in the Normandy campaign. The 15th Scots had trained with the 6th Guards tank back home in the UK. Now, that develops that kind of joint thinking, understanding what each other are going to do, and that's vitally important. There's a book by John Barclay where he goes through that mentality in detail, and there's also a link to World War II TV that I'll post up where he talks in detail about British armour in Normandy. Now, on that ridge line, you can see these cornfields here. I mentioned yesterday in a post about a detailed description, and I'll read that out later in this episode. But this is where they had one of their first engagements. It was brutal. To capture the high ground just beyond Caen, which is straight down this route.
Far in front, in direct line with us, sounded the cold-blooded chirps of a Nebelwerfer and the sparks of a stick of rockets streaking upwards into the night. We picked out the wailing across the sky above the din. There were 1 or 2 warning shouts of "Keep flat!" Closer came the wailing, crying over the sky for what seemed like an eternity. A Company froze to the earth. Down it moaned, down. One's fingers gripped and twisted the very soil. One's lips wrenched into a tight, silent, "Please God, please God." The lot fell on 9 platoon. There were a succession of sickening eruptions and stunned silence. A few agonised, lonely cries. "Stretcher bearer!" And when the next minute the signal came for A Company, Danny and a handful of his men arose and marched forward. It entailed the usual walk-run, the periodic halts in order to listen, that agonising pause, before the swift, shrill hiss of another stonk came over. Hollow-eyed, stubbly-chinned men bolting for cover, the clatter of rifles, spades, trench headboards being knocked over, and you're landing with a bump on top of somebody in a strange trench. Momentary refuge. Then hard, heavy explosions and the trench shaking, tiny rivulets dislodged earth over you. The whir of spinning metal, dust flying, and silence. Heads cautiously appear and survey the latest damage.
Just having a spot of shelter in the shade. Oof, it's been up to 40 degrees today. Absolutely screaming hot. Only Prince Madoc and Welshman cycle in the midday sun. Must be crazy. On the train now to Paris. Caught the train in Caen. It's about 2 hours to Paris. A couple of miles then across Paris and heading over to Rotterdam on the Eurostar. I had a moment to reflect really in the 2 hours of riding from Como area and the battlegrounds all the way to Caen. Heat was blazing. There was a good tailwind. We made good miles. But just a moment of thought really. Each one of those losses that was described in the books in the regimental diaries. We lost the tank here. The grenade incident. We lost the tank there. That's a friend of Don's potentially. And even if you, I don't know, if you work in an office, if you work in a shop, you're part of a rugby team, football team, netball team, whatever the scenario. Imagine if one of your friends wasn't there next week, wasn't there in training, wasn't in the office next week. That would be devastating. Imagine they had a horrific death. That would be life-changing. Imagine a dozen of them left you in one day. It doesn't bear thinking about. But that's the context. It is real world. You have to think about it in these terms. We can't perceive what they went through, what they would have seen. And in that football team, the rugby team, you've got friends, really good friends. You've got guys you get on with. You've got guys you don't really like, but you know all these people. I'm guessing we're in a tunnel right now, so before I upset everyone around me, I'm going to head off for the day and hopefully get to Rotterdam later tonight.